Welcome to the Drexel App Lab's second Xcode 7 and Swift 2 screencast. Today, we will be working through the first steps of our new project, which is a single-view iPhone game involving aliens and spaceships. To begin, we will open Xcode and start a new project. If you're unsure how to go about this, you can check out our first Swift screencast, which will walk you through the basics of downloading Xcode and creating and testing a simple project. Our project today will be called SpaceSmash. We will set up the project so that it is an iPhone app written in Swift and is a single-view application. Once our new project is loaded and ready to go, we will download the image files we need for our project and place them in our Assets folder. We've prepared a folder of these images for this screencast, which you can download by visiting the link bit.ly/screencast2images. There, you will find a folder with two files, a green alien image and a spaceship image. We will download these to our computer by clicking the Download button. Then, in Xcode, we will open the Assets folder and drag the images from our Downloads folder to our Assets folder. We will use the full screen button in the top left corner of Xcode to make our project easier to focus on. Then, we will set the background color of our app to be black so that it looks like outer space. To do this, we will first navigate to the main storyboard file in our app and click on it to make sure that it is active. Then, we will navigate to our Attributes Inspector. Here we will locate the background color attribute and set it to a black color from the drop-down list. We see the background of our main view change in real time. Now that our background color is set, we will add a button to our view so that our user has something to interact with. For this, we will go to the Object Library in the bottom right section of Xcode and search for button. Once we find the button object, we will drag it into our view. Blue lines, called guides, will appear to help you align your button in the view. Notice how the Attributes Inspector changes when we click on the button and then on the view. The inspector shows us the attributes of whichever object is active. You can make an object active by clicking on it. Make sure that when you make changes to an object in the inspector, you've made the correct object active. Once we have our button in place, we are going to replace the default button text with our spaceship image, so that the spaceship is what users will be tapping on instead of a piece of text. To do this, we will go to the Attributes Inspector and find the Image attribute. The drop-down menu there populates with the image files from our Assets folder, where we put our two images earlier. We will select our spaceship image file to replace the default button. This spaceship looks way too big for our game. To move and resize the spaceship, we can click and drag it around in our view, using the white resize boxes in each corner of the image to resize it. To maintain the height and width ratio of the image as you resize it, you can hold Shift as you drag the image. This will prevent your spaceship from looking stretched out after being resized. You can also resize the spaceship by clicking on the Size Inspector, located in our Inspector panel at the tab that looks like a ruler. Here we will set the width and height of our object to 50 pixels, and the X and Y coordinates each to be 100. The X coordinate is the horizontal coordinate, and the Y is the vertical coordinate, where the top left corner of our view is considered 0.00. Now that we have our spaceship all set up, let's make it disappear when the user taps on it. To do this, we will need to connect our spaceship to an action in our code that will run when the spaceship is tapped on. First, we will open our Assistant Editor, which you can do by clicking on the button that looks like two connected circles in the top right section of Xcode. This will open the Assistant Editor, which is a panel that appears next to our storyboard and which allows us to add code to our project in our viewcontroller.swift file. If you're new to programming or to Swift, the contents of the Assistant Editor may be confusing at first. However, all the code we see here now was generated by Xcode to help us get started. The green lines preceded by forward slashes are comments. These are used to explain our code and make it easier to understand, but they don't affect the way the app runs. This line, Import UIKit, tells our app to import the UIKit library. A library is a file of pre-written code that is designed to be used by other projects. Importing the UIKit library allows us to use parts of the UIKit library code that will make it easier to write code for our own project. Next, we see a line that defines a class. A class in code is a type that an object can be. Objects that are a certain type are called instances of those types. You can write your own classes to define types of objects that can have specific properties. All the code for this class exists between these two curly braces. We won't worry about how to write classes now, because we will cover that in later screencasts. However, this class controls what happens in our current view. To connect the spaceship to an action in our code, we must first right-click on the spaceship. You can also hold down the control button while clicking on the spaceship to right-click it. This brings up a list of events that our user can perform on this object that we can then use to connect this object to our code. The piece of code that we connect our button to will be triggered to occur by the event we select. For this object, we will select Touch Up Inside. This means that the piece of code we connect to this spaceship based on this action will occur when the user taps the spaceship. We will click on the radio button and drag this to our editor panel. Doing so prompts us to provide a name. We will name it ShipTouched. Then we click Connect. The structure for our code is automatically generated and inserted. This piece of code that was generated for us is called a function. A function is a block of code that has a name, allowing it to be used in other parts of our program. When our app runs, if this function is called, the code inside the function will run. In this case, since this function is triggered by the Touch Up Inside action, this function is called only when the user taps on our button. All the code inside the function is contained within these two curly braces. Functions like this one thus allow us to control what code in our program runs when, and allow us to reuse our code so that we don't have to write the same lines of code over and over every time we want to use them. Functions are an important concept in programming, but they can be confusing at first, so let's walk through each part of the one we just made. Before this function, we have a tag, @IBAction, which is a keyword in Swift that tells our code that this function is hooked up to a component in our view. The code in between the parentheses after the name of the function is the arguments to the function. An argument is an object that the function needs to use in order to run properly. Some functions take more than one argument, but ShipTouched takes just one. In this code, sender is the reference to the object that called our ShipTouched function. It is of type any object, meaning that it can be any kind of object. Anything that we do to sender will affect the object that called our ShipTouched function. In this case, since the function is connected to our spaceship, sender is referencing our spaceship, and anything we do to sender in this function will affect our spaceship. What we want to occur when the user taps the spaceship is for it to disappear. As such, we must insert code into this function that will cause the spaceship to disappear when the function is run. For this, type sender.remove from superview. In this piece of code, we are doing something to sender, which we know is our spaceship. Remove from superview is another function that is built into Xcode. This removes the object sender from the view that it is in. So this piece of code will cause our spaceship to be removed from our view. Note how when we call a function, we use parentheses after it. This lets our code know that we are calling a function, which means that we want the code inside the function to run. Let's open the app in Simulator and see if our code works. Once open, you can click on the spaceship to make it disappear from the view. In our next screencast, we will add aliens and a game over message to our game. Thanks for watching and see you soon.